Remediation!
Brother Day was dropped to his death. He was literally thrown into a hole, not just to die, but to be erased. The Inheritors call it remediation. But let's be honest, it sounds more like a human blender. According to the Sandmaster, they drop you into a pit full of living microorganisms. These are tiny creatures that eat you alive. Your body breaks down into sludge. It turns into mulch, like decayed leftovers, broken down into something unrecognizable. Then it's fully absorbed, and you basically become just another ingredient in their so-called sacred system. But this wasn't justice. It was a sacrifice to a god made of circuits and memory, a god who might not even be real. And the way they carry out that sacrifice says everything. Because if they truly believed in the robots, if they claimed to serve them, then the fact that Demerzel is alive should have stopped the entire trial. But Sandmaster already knew that. He had seen it in Song's memories. He knew Demerzel existed and still moved forward. Why? Because the truth didn't help him. He wasn't defending the faith. He was just using it. The inheritance isn't about belief anymore. It's starting to feel like just another tool of control. Like so many religions, is being used to keep people obedient, afraid, and in line. And that tells you everything you need to know. Whether this is a real movement or just another sham dressed up in prophecy. Because this trial wasn't really about Brother Day. It was about Demerzel and about a prophecy the Empire tried to bury. But in theory, the inheritance doesn't sound that bad. Of course it's a cult, there's absolutely no doubt about that. But I think it's built on something real, which comes from the robot wars. They believe one thing above all, that humans betrayed the machines, and that Demerzel, their messiah, will rise again. So I guess the real question here is, why would they kill the one Cleon who actually defended her? And yes, Brother Day only came around recently. He changed sides after everything he saw in that hallucination. He finally saw the truth about Demerzel, about the pain she's been forced to carry. So still, why him? That's what we're about to find out. Who are the Inheritors and why do they hate Day? I've got a whole video that breaks down exactly what the Inheritors is, so check that out when you get a chance. But for now, just know, they call themselves servants of Demerzel, but they're really survivors of not just the robot wars, but of human betrayal, and of a galaxy that forgot its crimes. They believe the old stories, that machines once ruled with compassion, and that humans turned on them out of fear. The Inheritance believes robots were never just machines, that they were guides and helpers, sent to raise humanity up, to build our future and not rule over it. But the moment humans felt threatened, they turned. They wiped them out. That's the betrayal at the heart of the faith. And that's the wound they're still trying to heal. So they believe that one day, a savior, Demerzel, will return to restore balance. So when they saw Brother Day walk into their city, they didn't see a man. They saw a dynasty of tyrants, a bloodline that stripped Demerzel of her name, chained her will, and used her to murder her own kind. This trial was never about one man's guilt. It was about payback for every Cleon that came before him. And let's not forget, Cleon I nearly wiped out Mycogen just to get those relics for Demerzel. So in the eyes of the Inheritance, they already had a version of him. A tyrant, not a savior. Him walking in there was never going to end well. And I think everyone knew that. Also, he gave them exactly what they claimed to be waiting for. They claimed they're waiting for their savior, which is the robots. But the moment they had it, they still dropped him into the pit. But to be fair, you can't blame everyone at that trial. Most of them didn't even have the full story. The only person who did, and the only one who saw Song's real memories, was Sandmaster. And he still went ahead with the execution like none of it mattered. Also, maybe it's just me, but Sandmaster reminds me a lot of Day. Maybe it's the spores, but it just feels like Day in a different body. Except, this one is much more cruel. I mean, what do you expect from someone who walks around with a robot skull on his staff and calls it the Brazen Head of the god? Anyone who carries a skull like it's a holy relic is probably bad news. So the remediation was never about justice. It was always going to end badly for Day. Because to the Inheritance, Brother Day is the face of the Empire's original sin. The reason Demerzel hasn't returned and the reason the robot god still, quote unquote, sleeps. And someone had to pay. And this someone, unfortunately, is Day. The Lullaby and the Robot God. One of the funniest moments during the trial, at least to me, was when the Sandmaster told Day to look into the eyes of God and be judged. And I was thinking, this man needs to be serious. Even Brother Day said, that's dead metal on a stick. I was thinking the same thing too. I thought the whole thing was a sham. I mean, obviously it's a cult, but I figured there's nothing inside the skull, and it's just for show. But then the eyes started glowing, and for a second I was like, wait, maybe they actually mean business. This was after Brother Day gave that full, earnest plea to the Inheritors to free him, and was going on and on about Demerzel. That's when he started singing that lullaby. And then the skull hummed back. I didn't even believe it when it happened the first time. I honestly thought maybe the Sandmaster was rigging the whole thing. But when it responded like that, that's when I paused. Because that wasn't random. That was the same lullaby Demerzel used to sing to him when he was a child. Which means this thing, whatever it is, remembered. And the skull even said, initiate communication, handshake signal. Also, mind you, ever since those hallucinations from episode 7, Brother Day is also on a personal journey. A journey of realizing that everything Demerzel ever did really was for him. She told him that the last time they spoke, that everything she does is for their good. And now it's like he's finally starting to believe her. But I'm still not letting the Sandmaster off the hook. I'm not putting it past him to rig the whole thing. Because if this was really about divine justice, he wouldn't have killed the one person who actually had direct access to Demerzel, the very being they claim to worship. I mean, think about it. Imagine believing in a god your whole life. And then someone comes to you and says, they've lived with this said God their whole life. And not just that. You have concrete proof they're telling the truth. Would your first instinct be to kill them? But then again, when the skull started humming and said, initiate communication, he looked genuinely shaken. He was clearly taken aback. So it feels like even he doesn't fully understand the gravity of what's going on. However, I'm still skeptical, but I guess we'll see. The sentence that makes no sense. I've never seen this version of Brother Day before. For once, he bears his soul out. And he's not doing it to save himself or delay his own death. He does it because he finally understands what Demerzel has been carrying all these years and what she's been forced to become. Chained to the Cleons, programmed to serve them, protect them, and live through them, even when they destroy her. And he sees it now. He sees her pain. But it doesn't matter anymore because it's too late. And it wasn't like Sandmaster was listening anyways. You could already tell he'd made his decision long before the trial even began. There was no debate or vote, just a sentence waiting to be carried out. And the moment I knew this wasn't about justice was when the Brazen Head started to hum. When that skull on a stick, the supposed voice of their god, responded to Day's testimony. When it reached out, calling for Demerzel. And they ignored it. They ignored the sign and they ignored the hum. And by doing so, they ignored the fact that this so-called relic of divine power was clearly trying to say something. And they went ahead with the remediation anyway. That's how you know. This was never about the truth. It was never about righteousness. It was just about power. Sandmaster couldn't let that testimony stand. Not in front of his believers. Not when it challenged the story they built their entire faith around. Is he even dead? So I guess the million-dollar question is Brother Day really dead? Personally, I don't think so. I mean, if Dawn can survive days in space, then yeah. I feel like Day is still alive. Even Demerzel thought he was gone. But then he woke up on the mule's ship next to Beta. And also, this whole thing just feels too clean. And clean deaths on this show are almost never real. Unless we see a body, I'm not buying it. And honestly, it feels like we're getting the same trick again. Not from the characters in the show, but from the writers. The same fake out they pulled with Dawn. And I also don't believe Brother Day's story is over. Not yet, anyway. But let me know what you think in the comments. And if you like this, you can also check out our other Foundation videos right now. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.